G'day everyone and welcome to another edition of Tuesday Night Live, episode 3, the 11th of May 2021. Lots to talk about. Lycett getting games, a few injuries to talk about, and why don't we just crack straight into it, shall we? Peter, how are you going?
I'm well, Fane. Yourself?
Well, I'm still in my work gear, so if that gives you any idea of what sort of day I've had today, then that should be it. Never mind. Fair bit to talk about. G'day to everyone who's joined us on Discord and YouTube and Twitch and anywhere else on Spreaker. If you're listening live audio on Spreaker, don't forget you can get around us on Discord. There'll be plenty to talk about tonight, and I'm sure we'll have one or two of the faithful Pete having a bit to say.
I hope so. I hope you can get on there and have a chat to us. We'd certainly love to hear from you.
100%. Oh, now, speaking of 100%, Peter, I just have to take a moment. And I'll look straight into the camera here. I'd like to apologise for everybody for the amount of times I've said 100% over the last two podcasts. It's something that's crept into my vernacular thanks to my eldest son, and it could possibly be a drinking game to rival that of Macca's. I couldn't agree with you more, but I'll try and minimise my 100% for the foreseeable future. So, Peter, every time I say 100%, give me a virtual slap over the head. Anyway.
100%, mate. Will do.
Very good. Right, now, first things first, mate. Let's talk about the incident with Ned McHenry and Lycett with the verdict handed down by the Tribunal of 4 weeks. What do you think?
Look, I thought it was a really easy one for the Tribunal this week, and more than any other reason, just the fact that we had the Neil Bullen precedent from last year. It's only relatively fresh in their minds, I would imagine. It was a very similar outcome, a similar incident, and 4 weeks was the tariff on that occasion, and so I thought that was going to be around about the mark this time as well. So I thought that given all of the gradings and given the precedent of Neil Bullen, I think it was a pretty easy decision.
Yep, I agree. The only caveat I'd put to that is that they seem to ignore the earlier incident with Will Hamill, which was also Lycett, wasn't it, I think, from memory? There were two sling tackles.
It was Rosie.
Oh, that was Rosie, that's right.
Rosie.
Yeah. Yep. Now, even though Hamill was able to continue, that was similarly a dangerous tackle. It wasn't even paid a free. And, I don't know, I think that one... Yeah, that one kind of led, like if the umpire had nipped that one in the bud, that actually could have saved McHenry from a sore head and Lycett from 4 weeks.
Could quite have, yes, I agree.
Yeah, so I felt, I don't know about you and I don't want to harp on the umpiring too much, but I felt the umpiring in our game was particularly inconsistent with those sorts of frees. Also, throws were inconsistent. I didn't think it was a particularly good performance by the umpiring. And to me, the umpiring seems to have gone downhill over the last month or so. And I just wonder whether there's too many directives coming from the puppet master, Mr. Hocking.
I think it's an age-old problem, Fiend, that they've just become too complicated a game to umpire. I thought the one that really troubled me in our game was some of the decisions relating to holding in the marking contest. I thought they had that wrong on a number of occasions, and I thought that what they're allowing Aaliyah to get away with was just ridiculous. So, and the one against Geordie Butts in the first quarter to Dixon when he had a fistful of Butts and Guernsey, just some really terrible decisions, decisions.
Yeah.
Which I
And when you look
reckon,
at
if you sat there, I always think sometimes if you sat the umpire down, you can bet that he'd want that one back.
yeah, yeah, not that they'd ever admit it, but I think you're right on that score. And it's a common theme, and I wish that we could simplify the game, simplify the rules for the umpires to implement. And but as long as we have the AFL trying to manipulate outcomes and manipulate the look of the game, I just think we're going to continue to have all these inconsistencies. And to a foreign observer, the game is so confusing, and I don't think the AFL are actually doing the game any favours at the moment at all.
I would like to know the last time a season commenced without some kind of rule or interpretation change. And you and I both know what committees are like. And if you create a committee, then they're going to do things. So when you've got a laws of the game committee, they're going to do things, and they're going to justify their existence every year. And so every single year, we either get rule changes or interpretation changes.
Yeah. Now, Sloane Ranger 3 in the chat says 100% couldn't agree with me more. So everyone have a drink.
Double bingo.
Everyone have a drink. All right. Now, injuries, Peter. Of course, we have a few, and it's a bit of a concern. Obviously, we have Mr. McHenry out for, you would think 2 weeks, I would say.
I would say 2. It was a nasty incident.
Yeah, and he was cooked when he came off. I mean, I don't know. I've certainly copped a couple of concussions. I think most people that play footy have copped a concussion or two in their lives, and you get up and you think you know what's going on, but you really don't. So we've got, apart from Ned, we've got Luke Pedler still 1 or 2 weeks away. That's starting to become a little bit of a concern. Matty Crouch also 1 or 2 weeks away. Tiles is still 4 to 5 weeks. Lachie's still 5 to 6. Lachie Murphy with that ankle was the other terrible injury from the game. Syndesmosis injury, had surgery today, so he's out for at least
close to season, really.
Just about.
By the time he gets himself back to fitness and comes back through the sandfall, that's just about his season gone.
Yep, I think so. Lynch now listed as also 8 to 10 weeks. So that's gone from you're right to be a medical sub to see you later, Tommy. And of course, we've got 2 other season injuries, Hinge and Miller. So, I mean, that's essentially 4, you'd call them first 22 players out for the season. And still a couple of first 22 players, Crouch and McHenry, out for a couple, and Tiles, 4 to 5. That's been 4 to 5 for a couple of weeks now. So, don't know, Peter. The cupboard's a little bit bare, and people talking about wanting certain players to come in and players should be dropped and all the rest of it. There's not a lot to choose from, really, as we just start talking a little bit about selection.
No, there's not. There's a couple that put their hand up in the reserves, as they did last week. And I talked last week about Ronan O'Connor. I thought that he was ready to come in last week. I think we had a conversation about, I thought that one of either he or Darcy was ready to come back for that midfield role instead of Haitley, and they went with Fogarty. And then Ronan put in another good performance on the weekend. He's still performing well. He had another 7 or 8 clearances or something, and 20-odd possessions. He's in good nick, and they're playing over in Perth. I really can't see any reason not to pick this kid.
I think so.
We talked about it last week. He's a big body. He's an experienced midfielder. He's a leader. He's, from all accounts, he's a terrific kid. He's in form.
Done the yards.
And he's done the yards, and he's in form in an area of the field that we are desperately short on. So I would be very, very hopeful that he gets a call up this week.
Yeah. There's probably a couple. We need 2 in. So would you bring in Jones, do you think?
I think I would. We talked about it last week, saying that he has to come in. He's had another good game. He's got some confidence.
Yes.
Because the problem that we've got, Fiend, is, of course, it's the state game bye for the SNFL. So whoever doesn't get selected is going to have a week off. Now, I just think that while we've got him in a little bit of hot form, what we need to do is actually get him into the team and not have him just sort of lie around for a week and not get any football. He needs football. So I would have Chase Jones in for sure, and I would give Jackson Haitley a little bit more time in the sample. He came up. He really wasn't, for mine, in the position that he wants to play up to the level. He had an excellent game last weekend. I'd like to see that, 2 or 3 of those in a row.
Yep, I agree. The other issue we've got, of course, against West Coast is that their tall forward line, even with, it sounds like Kennedy might be doubtful, but they've still got Darling and Oscar Allen there. I felt we went in short against Port and paid a bit of a price. Murray to come back in, or maybe Worrell to debut. What do you reckon?
Depending on what they do with Kennedy, we really need both of them in, to be honest. So with that forward line, but it wouldn't surprise me if they choose to rest Kennedy. They know they're going to win this by greater than 5 goals.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't surprise me at all for them to rest Josh Kennedy, because they'll still get the points. There's no question about that. So it would be a smart move on their part. But if they do play 3, then we've got to have a reasonable matchup. Now, it's clearly been an intent by the coaching staff to play a small defence this year. That's the way that they've selected it. They've gone with a 1 key defender. And that's all well and good. But against West Coast, they've really got to do something about that. Now, whether that's Murray, Worrell, Mackesy, I'd say Mackessy's still a way off.
Yeah.
So maybe a chance. Josh Worrell's been knocking the door down, mate, hasn't he? So maybe a good chance to bring him in. How tall is Josh Worrell, by the way?
194, I think.
194?
I think. I'll just check that for you. But, I think it's 194.
Can he play key?
Well, I wouldn't have thought so. I don't think he's quite tall enough or strong enough for a key. Let's have a look, Mr. Worrell here. He is 194 and 94 kegs. So he's reasonably well built, but I would say he's probably just a little way off being able to play key. The problem with the selection policies that we've had over the last month or so is that it really robs the team of Tom Diday's strengths, forcing him to play a lockdown role. And, they might be tempted to play Diday on Allen. But I just think it's a bit of a waste. David McKay wasn't terribly impressive on the weekend. So I'd probably bring in both,
I think it's a really good point that you make about Tom Diday. It's a double whammy, because what you're getting is you're losing him playing to his strengths.
Yep.
And what you're creating is an environment where he's being exposed.
Yes.
Now, he had a horrific game against Hawthorn, Tom, and he had another really poor game again on Saturday.
Yep.
And I think that it's a double whammy, as you say. We're taking a positive and turning it into a negative, which is crazy. So I agree. I'd really like to see those 2 guys in. I'd really like to see Worrell and Murray in.
Yeah.
I think what they'll do is they'll probably take them both. Might depend a little bit on what West Coast end up doing with Kennedy.
Yeah. Don't forget, while we're talking selection, if you've got an opinion, those of you who are in the live studio audience, don't forget to stick up your virtual hand, and we'll be happy to have you on board and hear your thoughts. Selection has been puzzling, mate. Last week, again, we went in with a very tall forward line, and to me, it just felt like, given the way that we played, certainly in the first 3 quarters, it looked like the plan was to bomb it in long to the tall timber and rely on the smalls to pick up the pieces. And, of course, that was stymied by losing 2 smalls in the first quarter. It was the first quarter. But we didn't do anything to try and change that structure up. And again, I was just a bit surprised that, given the matchups in Port's forward line and given the need to change things up in our forward line, I would have thought Himmelberg down back might have been a move that Nix and the panel might have considered once again.
I think it would have been a good move. And I think the other thing that I think that the coaching staff maybe this is probably a bit arrogant saying this because, of course, they should have their head around it, the coaching staff. But there seems to be, the way they were playing on the weekend, there seems to be this perception that you need to bomb it along to Riley. Riley's he's really fast, man. He's really fast. He's a midfielder, and they don't seem to have their heads around that. You just see I think it was the second goal that he kicked. He let out.
Yeah.
And then he ran behind and completely burned his defender off, and then just made space and just for an easy chip over.
Yeah.
They can't. He's an impossible matchup because
there was
fast.
And there was another case in the third where he's led right up the middle of the ground, got about 5 metre separation on his opponent, and then he's chipped a nice little one wide to I forget who it was that he brought in, but he brought a teammate into play to get it for. That's right. Yep. I think you're right. I don't think they use his mobility, do they?
They don't, and there's no reason to be bombing the ball in long to Riley Thilthorpe because he can create space. He can just do everything. I'm not trying to be funny.
No. I agree with you, mate. Look, I think I can understand that Nick's might be trying to keep things basic. Keep it simple, etc., while the kids are learning and all that. But the key to football in 2021 with the new rules and all the rest of it is separation. And we highlighted it on Sunday night. We were playing a lot of one-lane footy, and we highlighted a few occasions where that resulted in all our tools going up for a ball in the forward 50. And yet other times when we were able to change lanes and spread the Port defence, our forwards were able to get good separation and actually allow the kick coming in to go to their advantage. And it's such a bigger part of the ground that you have to defend when there's some width going on. When the ball's just coming straight up and down the lane, you only have to defend the 20 metres in front of you. When there's some width, you've got the whole forward line that you have to worry about. And I just think it's far too simplistic, and it's not really. We could have some advantages with Himmelberg and Thilthorpe up forward, just in terms of matchups. But we don't seem to utilise it by playing that straight up and down the line footy.
No, we don't, and we became extremely one-dimensional. I'm sure you talked about that on Sunday. Extremely one-dimensional on Saturday night.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
And it showed it showed in the last quarter. Our forward 50 entries changed completely, and Lord Curry Favale would attest to the extremely professional graphics that I put up, Peter.
Yes,
showing.
I did hear about those.
Oh, mate, it's the talk of Channel 7. I got a call from Fox Footy, but I didn't answer it because I'm too committed. But the last quarter, our forward 50 entries changed completely, 100%, completely drink up. And as a consequence, it was our most effective quarter in terms of efficient forward 50 entries. So it'll be interesting to see how we continue to play that, because I think it's done to death. And I think similarly, the one tool, as you say, down back is done to death. The only question I'll ask you before we move on from selection is the age-old question, Peter. Mr. Walker.
Yes, I thought we were going to bring this one up. Do we fly Tex over?
Well, I wouldn't. I would.
Personally, I wouldn't. I would rest him, absolutely. I don't think he's obviously not 100% fit. I can't see a benefit other than the fact, the old chestnut that we got down in Hobart is we need, or Launceston, we need someone experienced walking around the rooms. But
well, he can have it. He can have a trackie on, as you said.
Yeah, we'll fly him over in a trackie, but I wouldn't play him. No, I would rest him and have him fit for Melbourne the following week for sure.
Yep. And tailing on from that, would you then give the keys to Fogg for that spot?
Absolutely, because there's going to be a knock-on effect if they don't. Because if they're going to expect Fogg to play midfield on Optus against West Coast, he's going to be horribly exposed. And I didn't mind Fogg's game on Saturday night.
No. He got amongst it.
He's going to be terribly exposed at Optus against West Coast.
Yeah. I without labouring the point, I think he's being set up to fail as a midfielder at the moment, and I think they need to give him a run in that spot. And a flight over to Perth is not going to do Tex any favours whatsoever. It's not really going to do the team any favours. It's not a game we'd be looking to win, in my opinion, on paper at least. So I think selection in terms of whether they've seen off that block of games to the showdown and whether they're going to reset, particularly with some injuries, is going to be quite interesting. A number of our kids look a little bit sore. McPherson looks sore to me. Scholl looks a bit sore. Berry looks like the pace of the game is just getting him a little bit at the moment. Its selection is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, well, as I say, my big G for this week will be O'Connor to come in, and obviously we've got a couple of injured players to replace. I don't think we've got anybody experienced ready to come back. I think that if there's no other changes, I think we've got O'Connor and Jones to come in.
Yeah,
and we then need to. If we're saying we're not taking Walker and we're going to move Fogg, then we need another midfielder, I guess. So maybe it is Haitley. Maybe Haitley does come in if they're going to go that way, and they bring Haitley and O'Connor into that midfield.
Yeah,
slide Darcy back down to full forward, and open up a rotation in the forward line.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Harry got some more midfield minutes, and I thought he did. He played some good minutes on the weekend. I thought he
was good.
I felt like he took a bit of a step. He's clearly not got a tank yet for a full game in the midfield, but look out when he does, I reckon.
Yeah, no, I think good.
Any chance Newchurch?
I wouldn't think so.
No,
I wouldn't think so. I'd be pretty disappointed if they took a kid like Newchurch over to West Coast, over to Perth for a game like that. I don't think he's up to it.
That was smack of. No, that was smack of Ben Davis at Condinia Park. Really, chuck a raw kid into the walls. Yeah.
I think the only guys.
Plus, he's not ready.
Are the three guys we mentioned? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he's not ready.
Yeah, fair enough.
The three guys we mentioned, I think are in with the show.
Yep.
So that's the other thing they might do is that they could drop an extra tall, I suppose, but I'm just not sure it's the way to go. Oh no, we were talking about also Murray coming in, weren't we? And maybe Worrell. So that would be 4 changes.
Yeah.
3 forced, 2 unforced. So interesting.
Yeah, and the thing about maybe a Jones inclusion is that Seedsman's been our length player in terms of forward 50 injuries and transition. Brodie Smith has been forced to play a little bit more defensively and a little bit deeper. Bringing Jones in might actually enable us to release Smith a little bit, because I'm sure that coaches have been looking at our game style lately and thinking, all right, we've got to shut down Seedsman because he's obviously he's the vehicle between the two arcs. So very interesting selection. Very interesting this week. Now, before I do my little mid-cast promotion, we've got 5 people in chat there. So if anyone wants to have a chat about selection or anything else in the meantime, then stick your hand up and we'll give you a run before we get into our draft class deep dive. So, Pete, you'll know that we're trying to grow our Discord community. So certainly people not so much listening tonight, but maybe listening on demand or watching on demand, make sure you join our Discord community if you haven't already. We're up to nearly 150 people now in our Discord server, and the game day chat is excellent. And I think on Sunday night we had close to 700 chats in during the stream, comments during the stream. So it's a fantastic spot. It's good, mature conversation. There's no melting or very little melting. Razor gets a bit pissed sometimes, but he can be excused because it's generally 3 a.m. over there when he's here. G'day, Raze. But yeah, get around our Discord server. The links are in or everywhere, basically. But if you have a look at our descriptions and if you have a look at our YouTube channel, or if you go to aflcrowcast.com, where you'll also find all the AFL news from around the different websites as well, you'll be able to hook into our Discord server. And of course, if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you give us a subscribe and a like. And if you're listening on iTunes, give us a review. And if you'd like to dip in a few dollars, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/AFL Crowcast. We did have 1 or 2 new patrons after Sunday's cast, which was great. And I'll certainly be pinpointing our patrons again on Sunday on the weekend wrap. All right, Peter. No one seems to want to talk, so why don't we get into, and I'll give it a big drum roll, why don't we get into our feature for Tuesday Night Live, and that's our South Australian 2021 draft class deep dive. And after a bit of a general chat last week, we've decided to go with the potential number 1 pick this week, Mr. Jason Horne. What do you reckon, mate?
We'll have a look at we'll have a look at Jason, and even though I think that as the season wears on, it's increasingly likely that we don't have an opportunity of selecting Jason, we'll certainly still have a look at him. Yeah. He is obviously the talk of the draft. He was last year. He will be this year. I've seen nothing happen so far this year that looks like occurring that will dislodge him from that spot. They're talking about Dacos, but he's a father-son. So in terms of the open draft, I really don't think anyone is going to be challenging Jason at this stage, particularly when he's got the under-19 champs to come.
Yeah,
he will.
Agree.
I suspect he'll dominate those champs, and he'll only further solidify his position. But look, he's got a great pedigree from Christie's Beach Football Club. He was an All-Australian under-16, state under-16 player, of course. He had quite an amazing year last year, starting off in under-18s, and then I think we've all seen those highlights of his game against Westies where he danced around, I think, 4 players in the end. He started at about the wing at the old Richmond Oval. He danced around about maybe 4 or 5 players before beating a 40-metre goal, and we just thought, oh my goodness me, did that stop the nation, that one. So he kind of had the advantage, I guess, of the Victorian kids not playing. He had the attention all to his own, but I'll tell you what, he hasn't disappointed this year. He started off in the league squad, of course, and he's playing league football for South Adelaide. His school is finished. He works down at the Flurio Milk Company, working down on the trucks down there, loading and unloading. So that'll be giving him some good muscle tone as well. And just waiting to sign a great big fat AFL contract in a few months' time. So he's all set to go. But look, he hasn't set the world on fire statistically in the SANFL. But if you look at some of the highlights that he puts in, you just think, oh, wow. Some of his evasion in traffic, some of his goal sense, and just his hardness at the ball. Now, did you see that little clip that was released by Zach Milbank with his attack on Riley Knight on the weekend? I'm not sure if you caught that.
No, I haven't seen it yet. Was that on Twitter?
It was a ball in it was on Twitter. Zach Milbank tweeted it, so get a look at it. The ball was in dispute around the middle of the ground, and Riley Knight looked like he had it all to himself, and he kind of turned as you would do. He went to pick it up, but you can just see out of the corner of your eye, Horne sees it, and he just absolutely sprints at this contest, and he just flies into Knight and just cracks into him and knocks him off the ball. And in the one motion, he's picked up the ball and handballed it to a teammate who's run off with it. It was phenomenal. Yeah. And this is Ryan. This is this is an AFL hardened,
that's
mid-20 player.
Yeah.
And this 18-year-old
fresh off an AFL list.
So I'd have a look at that, and you can see what Jason can do. And he's going to be a star fiend. I don't think there's any doubt about that, because you can just see his work in traffic and his goal sense. He's perfect size, 184 centimetre. He's that mid that everybody wants. He's that, and we've talked about there's 3 South kids that are in that that mould, but he's the star. There's no question about that. If you've got pick one, that's who you go. That's who you pick one.
Sorry, I found that vision. I'm trying to put it up on the screen for people. So just bear with me a second.
No, that's okay. I'll keep going. So,
you keep going.
For me, there's no way that North Melbourne are going to trade that pick. And interestingly for them, in a draft last year where we had three or four really good tools around the top 10, that was the time for North Melbourne to really get their building blocks in place and draft tall. But they went for Will Phillips, which seemed like an unusual move.
It was a very unusual
knowing
move.
what was coming this year. And so
just got that vision going at the moment, Pete.
There's no.
Oh, yeah. He's cracked that in, hasn't he?
Did you see that? That's just unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm just replaying it. That's a Dangerfield Murphy
moment, isn't it?
attack. It's 100%. Oh, God, drink. Yeah, that's impressive. And like you said, the kid's are fresh out of under 18s and he's attacking a seasoned AFL player. So, very impressive. He's got good numbers.
Yeah, he's only had the one down game, and other than that, he's hovering around about that sort of that 15 to 18 possession a game.
Yeah,
kind of mark. That's okay. For a kid, that's okay. He could still be playing under 18s now. That's the crazy part. And if he was playing under 18s, he'd be racking up 50 disposals a game and 5 goals. So he's the real deal. And when recruiters looking at that bit of vision that you've just put up, Fiend, that will just cement in their minds that this is a kid that's ready for AFL, and look out for anyone that gets in his way. He's brutal. So he will go number 1. North Melbourne won't be able to resist him, even though they need a really, really quality tool in this draft. It's not coming in the top 10. I don't think there's anybody around that top sort of 10 that's going to push up and anything like number 1. So he's the number 1 pick. North Melbourne are going to have it. That's where he's going. They're not going to get that pick to Jason Horne.
No chance of trading in 2022 picks to get us up there?
I don't think so, Fane. And we can talk about it next week with Matty Roberts. The reason, as you know, that I've been so excited about Matty, and you can attest to this, Fane, I've been on his train for a number of months now.
Oh, yes. Yep.
The reason I'm so excited about him is that I think he's gettable, but I think that it might end up costing us, given the fact that we've already 3 wins and we've got home games against Hawthorn and North Melbourne to come. And we'll talk about Matty next week, but I'm terribly concerned that we're going to end up with sort of pick 4 or 5, and that's just not going to be enough. So anyway, so Jason Horne is an absolute crackerjack, and he's inside, he's outside, he's tough, he's skilled, he's got it all.
He can take a mark. But that's the thing. He is inside out. But he can also go forward and hurt you on the scoreboard.
Absolutely,
going to be a very similar player to what I think a lot of people are hoping that Elijah Holland turns into. Elijah, a bit of a different start in that Elijah's played predominantly forward, and people are sort of assuming that he's going to be able to transition to the midfield. I kind of have my doubts. COVID, that COVID season that he lost, and also he would have lost it anyway through injury, I think might have cost him a year's development, which might set him back in terms of midfield time. But Jason Horne is exactly what a lot of people projected Elijah Holland to be, and that's that bullocking inside-out midfielder who can go forward and hurt you on the scoreboard with just that little bit of X factor, and is definitely the real deal.
That's the thing. That's what everyone wants, Dusty. Everyone wants 184, go forward, kick a goal, but be that goal-scoring mid who can play both positions and hurt you in a number of different ways. And he's just that package.
Yeah. I didn't realise Fabian Francis was his stepdad, did you?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I didn't realise that. There you go. A good thing
Fabian Francis didn't
hit 100 games for Port, or it was 150 or whatever it is. Otherwise, it would have been father-son there. As if they've already got Jace Berg on. They don't need another one this year.
But it's quite amazing. It's quite amazing. Horne, Robertson, Draper have been together since under 16s, and it's amazing that you could get three kids that develop into the same size, to the same position. That 183, 184 goal scoring. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, it's an interesting first up conversation with Jason because it's kind of already all known. He's been such an exposed talent that it's really. I mean, he probably won't go one only because someone will probably bid for Dacos, but. Notwithstanding, he would. It's at this stage, looking at the Victorian prospects, he still looms as, at worst, a top 3 pick and highly likely to be a first choice. I just can't see North Melbourne having the agates to not take him.
Oh, there's absolutely no chance in the world that they won't take him. No chance in the world. Because as you quite rightly point out, he's so exposed.
Yeah, and there's going to be more to come. I mean, he's going to have a state game that he's going to be exposed in against WA, probably, if he gets picked.
He didn't make that side. That side was just.
Oh, didn't make it.
He didn't make it. No, but he'll be in the under-19s, and he'll just destroy that.
Yeah, he will. He will. Pete, if we finish 16, how hard would you go at him to try and give Norths an offer they couldn't refuse? How hard would you go at him? Would you be happy just to get Matty Roberts, who we'll probably talk about next week, but would you be happy to get Roberts with pick 3 or 4?
I'd have a crack at Jason with maybe next year's. There's a couple of really, I won't bore the listeners with it at the moment, but there's a couple of really, really strong SA midfielders again coming through next year. But I just don't think there's the X and hurt factor of Horne. So, do you really sell the farm? Are you happy with Roberts? It's a hugely tough call. Hugely tough call. Because anybody that saw Roberts' highlights on the weekend, he's not that far off.
In his debut, mind you.
In his
had
debut,
18 or 19 touches, yeah.
Fane, what really pissed me off is that I thought I think I said last week he was about to go into hiding. And this issue that you point out with exposure. I was off to bloody St. Peter's on Saturday with my son, going to watch them and play Pembroke. I'm thinking, this is going to be great. I'm going to be able to sit here, have a pie, and just watch bloody Matty Roberts from the boundary line and just
rack up 40 touches.
Right, in the first quarter, and they'd given him permission to play for South. And I checked out the policy, and they've changed it just recently that if a player does get selected in a league side only, then they'll release him. So I bet, not that I'm saying he didn't deserve to play, Fiend, at all, but I bet London to a brick that South of Sydney are saying, well, we either lose him or we play him in the league team.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind betting you're right, and it's certainly. I mean, he's been on most avid draft watchers' radars, Matty Roberts, but he's shooting up the charts a bit. I guess. The thing that puts Jason Horne in the frame for us, if he was at all gettable, is that if there's one thing that our team lacks, it's that silk and that class and that X factor. Matty Roberts, I reckon, gets you a gilt-edged, cast-iron Sam Walsh type player, with maybe a little bit more scoreboard hurt factor than Sam.
That's a good comparison.
But Jason Horne gives you dare I say it, a dusty clone. Yeah. For 10 years.
That's the difference, isn't it? And so that's why you say, you've got to have a crack. You've got to. I don't think North Melbourne. I don't think that they budge. But I think you've got to have a crack.
I mean, I guess what you're offering them is Jason Horne plus a pick. You're offering them Matty Roberts plus a pick for Jason Horne, basically, wouldn't you?
Yeah, that's a good point.
So if you're giving them 3 and three in next year's first pick, so say 3 and I don't know, let's be optimistic and call it 5, 3 and 5 for Horne and so 3 gets some Roberts, so Roberts and 5 for Jason Horne. You'd probably have a think about it if you're North Melbourne, because, as you say, next year's draft crop, certainly from South Australia in terms of mids, isn't terrible. you'd put something in. You'd have to put something in front of him like that. I think. The
I
only
think
problem is that he's a South Australian, and so that just lets everybody know that the Crows will be dead set keen on getting him,
Yep.
which just
Yep.
adds an extra chip to the bloody negotiating table, doesn't it? I mean, he's a South Australian as well, so chuck in next year's second rounder as well, and Matthew Nix's firstborn child.
Yeah,
So
I love those. I love that comparison you did with Dusty and Walsh, and you're getting, as you say, with Roberts, you're getting that cast iron, most likely an All-Australian player, but
yeah,
you're not. Yeah, you're getting that real, as you say, X factor, match winner style of player.
yeah.
And we need him bad, Fang. We need him bad. And look, I came onto the cast tonight thinking, look, we'll just talk about Jason and we've got no chance. But you're almost talking me around to thinking we could be a chance.
Oh, never say never. I guess the reason why I'm so big on, and I think Matthew Roberts is great, don't get me wrong, but we have accumulators in our midfield already. I think Luke Pedler will become a bit of an accumulator. Sam Berry is a bit of an enforcer. We've got Harry Schoenberg, who will be an inside-out type with good creative skills. We've got that sort of inside/inside-out midfielder sorted. Horne can get his own ball, but God, he'll cut teams up on the outside, and I reckon he'd just be the icing on the cake to our next premiership window midfield, if you ask me.
Yeah, I agree. No question about it.
Yeah.
No go-home factor. And
no.
Yeah. So that's just interesting that we've had, for the last couple of years, probably 3 out of the last 4 years, we've had such talent at the real pointy end of the draft.
That's right. It's it's just a generational thing, isn't it? It comes in peaks and troughs, and when you've got I think it's more noticeable when you've got a smaller talent pool in South Australia, just through weight of numbers. But it happens. Even the Victorian draft classes are stronger and weaker. There's always those Victorian kids that are touted as the next best thing, but some drafts are just weaker than others. And at the moment, we've had the Lacocious draft, we've had the Rosie situation, and that draft, and we've had some really good midfielders come through South Australia over the last 4 or 5 years, and then of course Riley coming through. So I don't know whether it's just luck or whether someone's doing something right at SANFL level. I think it's just luck. I just think it's the way the cards fall, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think our pathways are a little bit better at the moment as well.
Yeah, possibly. Now, we do have a couple of minutes left before we finish. If now 1990, I noticed that you had your hand up earlier. If you want to come on, or if any of the others there want to come on and have a quick chat before we close it off, now is the time. As I mentioned earlier, Pete, if people want to support us on Patreon, they can go to patreon.com/AFL Crowcast and flick us a couple of bucks. But in the meantime, here we have fast turning into a podcast stalwart and certainly a live stage supporter, Peter. 1990 Crow, how you going, mate?
Good, Phoenix. How are you? How are you, Pete?
Very, very good, mate. Good to hear from you.
Yeah, just calling up. I generally tend to watch the draft most years. I've got a SANFL live pass, so I generally watch a few games on the weekend, mainly under 18s. It's generally where most of the young guys that I'm sort of interested in terms of the draft are playing. But I have seen a bit of Matty Roberts and Jason Horne, and I think they're obviously both going to be top 3 or 4, maybe 5 draft picks this year going on form. And in particular, Jason Horne, I think we've got to go all in on him.
What would you give, mate? What would you give?
I would, I was just saying in the chat, I reckon we'll finish 17th. I think Collingwood's best is better than ours, and I think they'll overtake us as the season goes on. Similarly, we lost to Hawthorn, so I I think they'll find a way to get above us. So I think we'll finish 17th, going on form. So say we finish 17th, we'd have pick 2, and North Melbourne obviously going to have pick 1. By the way they're going, and I would give up pick 2, and I'd give up next year's first rounder, which probably, like Phoenix was saying, would probably be around that pick 5 range, and then look to get a second rounder back.
I wouldn't even care about the second rounder, mate. I wouldn't give a shit.
If it comes to it that no deal unless we leave it at just the 2 first, then yeah, I'd still do it.
Yeah. Well, once in a generation players don't come along very often, are they? And we're fortunate enough to get Riley in the last draft. To get 2 and 2 drafts is Hawthorne-esque in terms of building a dynasty. They got 3 or 4 players that turned into the foundation of the backbone of their premiership era in Mitchell. Mitchell was down the draft a bit, but Roughhead and Buddy, obviously. And if we could go Thilthorpe, Horne in successive drafts, that sounds to me like the good backbone of a premiership tilt in a few years' time.
Well, you need that group of 6 or 7 players, really, that are high end talent to build around, all within 3 or 4 drafts, building together, building that relationship, all peaking at the same time. And you look at it, what is our rebuilding phase? It's 2019, well, some might say 2018, I'd say 2019 to 2021. And as much as Mackessy's form hasn't been amazing so far, I still think he's going to be quite a good player eventually once he adds bulk to his frame. We've got Schoenberg, Worrell, and then last year we had Pedler, Phil Thorpe, obviously, Braden Cook. I've got big raps for. I think he's eventually going to be a Steve Johnson type up at half forward. Then we've got Sam Barry, who's obviously come in and played quite well. And then if we go all in on Jason Horne this year, maybe look at picking up. I've mentioned in the chat, I'd go for Dylan Stevens as a trade. And then next year, we wouldn't have a first rounder, but I think you've mentioned Isaac Rankin's going to be coming out of contract end of next year. We're lacking that X factor. We're lacking that small forward. If we don't have a first rounder and he's out of contract, Gold Coast can't really do much about that. So if we don't have one, we ask the question and we find a way to get him.
Lots to unpack there, Peter.
So that's a whole list management.
That's it.
Isn't it? Which I'm happy to do.
Those are my key thoughts, anyway.
Yeah.
No, I think it's really good, and Fiend knows that. I feel that a really key building block is also, I think that we should sign next year Trent Dumont as a free agent. I'd like to see him back. I know he's not a sexy name, and I'll probably cop some brickbats for that, but I think that we should, because I think he fits our list profile. And so if you can just add little pieces like that, and that's what you end up, you're building, costs us nothing, no draft, no picks at all, and no trade.
We're so close to having that list. I think if we could nail this draft, bring in players that have that sort of 22 to 26, 7 range next year. I think 2023 going onwards, we're going to really rise up quite quickly, I reckon.
Yeah, I think so. Thanks, mate. Time's getting long, but
Thanks,
it's always good to have you on. So we'll see you on Sunday night.
Appreciate it.
Pedro,
I'll
start up the outro music here. Just not forgetting too that Lachie Scholl signed for another 2 today.
Good man.
So that was nice. Thanks to everyone who's joined us on Discord. It's been a very lively chat. Thanks to everyone who's joined us on YouTube as well. And, of course, we will be back on Sunday with the Sunday Wrap. Now, just keep an eye out, because I reckon we're going to push it back half an hour to 8 o'clock on Sunday, because we do have the stupid late game on Sunday over in WA. So most likely 8 o'clock, but I'll confirm that on socials in the next couple of days. Thanks, Peter, for joining us again, and thanks everyone
mate.
for joining us. We'll see you later on.
Cheers now. Bye now.